Greece, a classical civilization filled with a variety of city-states. Each city-state in Greece have their own individual architecture, philosophy, government, and culture. As a collective of city-states, they have inspired modern civilizations. But throughout history, one particular threat had endangered Greece. A threat so enormous that it had all Greek city-states unified. Persia, the mightiest and biggest empire of the Mediterranean world. They have their army filled with millions of soldiers. In comparison to Greece, they have a fraction of that. The total of their soldiers only counted around 100,000 to 200,000. The conflict between Greece and Persia started at the Ionian Revolt, where Persia attempted to rule Ionian cities. The Ionians started an uprising against the rule, in which this conflict has escalated to the Persian War. The war was a series of battles which included the Battle of Marathon, the Battle of Thermopylae, the Battle of Salamis, and finally the Battle of Plataea. But despite the disparity in soldiers, Greece was able to fend off Persia's conquest and ultimately become victorious in the war. Greece did the impossible, but how were they able to win the Persian War? With their soldiers amounting around 100,000, how were they able to defend themselves from millions of soldiers? Greece was able to win the Persian War by unifying their cities, taking advantage of their territory, and utilizing their military strategies. Every Greek city-state had their own individuality. They have their own government, culture, military. They live by their own rules. Greek city-states also vary in different sizes, as some were small, others were big and dominant. Sometimes there will even be wars between city-states. So if the Persian War happened without the unity between the city-states, then Persia would have won easily, sweeping every city-state one by one. Unity is an enormous factor in Greece's victory because every city-state of Greece was different. Each city-state has a different flair to them that makes them special apart from the rest, such as the Athenian leader Themistocles, who urged the government to build triremes. Only Athens was capable of controlling the naval ships because of their location being so close to the sea. Along with the abundance of silver, they had enough wealth to build as many naval ships as possible. We also have Spartans, a Greek city-state whose entire government is based around military and honor. From a Greek philosopher, Xenophon, he documents a time where young Spartans had to run barefoot to harden their skin. There was also a time where Spartans had to adapt to extreme environments by wearing one piece of clothing every year. This type of training continues throughout the young lives. The results of this training was shown in the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 Spartan soldiers sacrificed themselves to fend off the entire Persian army. This is one of the reasons why unity is so important, because in this case, no other Greek city-state would be able to pull off this feat. Only Sparta would take on the extremity of this battle. Their efforts delayed the Persian army and helped the rest of the Greek army to retreat. This aspect of unity helps Greece bring out the strongest strengths from each city-state. Even despite the disadvantage in numbers, their expertise for different specialized areas of the military helps increase their chances of winning. However, unity alone is not enough for Greece to win the war. The next important part of their victory is their territory. Essentially, they use all the advantages of what their environment offered. That includes their topography, climate, location, and more. The Battle of Marathon is a prime example when Athenian and Persian forces fought each other on the Marathon's plains. The topography of Marathon was uneven, and that didn't suit well with the Persian army, as they are more comfortable on flat ground. Opposed to the Athenian forces, they had the upper advantage with an uneven ground, as they are used to their own home and territory by now. Thus, they were able to exploit the Persian army weaknesses as they weren't adapted to the land, which led Athenian forces to victory at the Battle of Marathon. Another time when Greek took advantage of their territory was at the Battle of Thermopylae. That's when Xerxes, a Persian king at the time, tried to advance his forces through the narrow path. With the Greek having the knowledge of this terrain, they stood in a defensive position within the narrow passageway. In this way, the Greek wouldn't have to face all of the Persian forces at once, due to the nature of Thermopylae's narrow passage. As a result, it gave the Persians a really hard time to push through the Greek army. Not only their advantage was the terrain, but also the weather conditions, because at the same time the battle started, a huge storm near the coast destroyed a third of Persian ships. What this battle showed us is how the Greeks' territory gave them an extreme advantage because it significantly decreased the threat of Persians' large numbers. As well, with a little bit of luck, Mother Nature can also do the job for you. Overall, they were able to even out the odds by utilizing this kind of strategy. Given the knowledge of their own territory, this will continue throughout the battles on land and sea, where they will just keep picking off the Persian army one at a time. The Greek army has been using their strategies and tactics throughout the entirety of the war. Out of everything I had mentioned before, it is the biggest factor that led the Greek city-states to victory. Unifying their city-states was part of their strategy. Using the terrain was also part of the strategy, as they were both plans to achieve an overall goal. With all Greece's collaborative efforts, their main strategy throughout the war was to delay and weaken the Persian army expedition as much as possible. At the Battle of Thermopylae, Leonidas and his Greek army were trapped. He made a play by delaying Xerxes' forces as much as possible, in which he and his 300 best Spartan warriors stayed behind in order to allow the rest of the Greek army to retreat. In an effort to save thousands of soldiers' lives and delay Xerxes' forces, it gave the rest of the Greek army more time to prepare for the next battle. Not only that, but the delay gave them environmental advantage. The harsh winter had blocked Xerxes' path to surround Greece. The location where the winter hadn't reached was the island of Salamis. That's where the Greek navy set up the defenses at the end of the narrow path once more. Athenian commander Themistocles lured Persian ships through that narrow path. Leading to the bottom of Salamis, the Greek ships picked off Persian ships one at a time. From the top of the cliff, Xerxes watched his ships get destroyed. This was a turning point for Greece in the Persian War, as later on, Xerxes gave up his efforts to conquer Greece and went home. He left his command of the remaining army to General Mardonius. Analyzing the Battle of Salamis, they were able to use their territorial advantage once again by doing the same strategy done at the Battle of Thermopylae. By picking off Persian navy ships one by one, it prevented Xerxes from unleashing his full force all at once. Xerxes fell for the same strategy twice, all because the weather had forced his ships to follow through a narrow pathway. This strategy was only possible due to the collective effort from previous battles of constantly delaying them, just like how Leonidas did with his 300 Spartans. All of Greece's effort throughout war paid off at the final battle of Plataea, where General Mardonius thought he had an upper advantage to attack first, but the Greek army countered that and Mardonius eventually died in battle. His death lowered the morale of the Persian army, where they retreated back home, ultimately ending in Greece's victory in the Persian War.